My wife smirked while her pregnant sister said I was nauseating. So I left. No yelling, no note, just silence, and a frozen apartment full of unpaid subscriptions. Before we begin, please subscribe, and I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? You ever walk into a house thinking it's still your home, only to realize you were just a tolerated guest all along? I pulled into the driveway of my in-laws' place in Chandler, checking my reflection one last time in the rearview mirror. September heat was finally breaking, painting the Arizona sky that perfect pink-orange that tourists write postcards about. I'd worn my best shirt, the navy one Camille used to say made my eyes look brighter, and grabbed sunflowers from the grocery store. Not roses, not some generic bouquet. Sunflowers. The kind Camille used to sketch in the margins of her notebooks when we first started dating. Drama-free evening, I muttered to myself, grabbing the flowers. Just get through dinner. The Moore's house smelled like rosemary chicken and vanilla candles when I walked in. Too perfect, almost like Patricia had been staging it for a magazine shoot. My wife Camille appeared in the hallway, her dark hair pulled back, wine glass already in hand. "Hey, babe." She kissed my cheek, but her eyes went straight to the flowers. Sunflowers. How cute. Something cold flickered in her voice, but I pushed it down. I'd been pushing a lot of things down lately. "Thought you might like them," I said, handing them over. From the living room came a voice I'd been hearing way too much of lately. "Look who finally showed up. Thought we'd have to send a search party from Whole Foods." Haley Moore, 28, 8 months pregnant, and somehow convinced the world owed her everything because she was carrying a baby. My sister-in-law had been living with us for 6 months now. What started as a temporary arrangement after her breakup had morphed into something that felt disturbingly permanent. She was sprawled across the couch like a queen holding court. Feet propped up on the coffee table, one hand resting on her swollen belly. The other held a plate of artisanal crackers and goat cheese. "For the baby's cravings," she'd explained when I'd questioned the $40 grocery bill for fancy cheese. Everything was for the baby's cravings now. "Traffic was light, actually," I said, forcing a smile. "How are you feeling, Haley?" "Exhausted. This little one's been kicking all day." She rubbed her stomach dramatically. "But someone has to keep an eye on Mom while she cooks. You know how she gets with dinner parties." I glanced toward the kitchen where Patricia was indeed spiraling, muttering about mashed potatoes that weren't fluffy enough. Greg sat in his recliner, glasses sliding down his nose as he pretended to read the newspaper. He'd perfected the art of being present but not involved, a skill I was starting to envy. "Can I help with anything?" I offered, stepping toward the kitchen. "Oh, that's sweet of you, Mark," Patricia called back, but Camille was already turning away, returning to her wine and whatever she was stirring on the stove. Dinner was served with the usual chaos. Patricia fluttered around the table like a nervous bird. Greg carved the chicken with mechanical precision, and Haley held court from her recliner, which had been wheeled up to the table so she could keep her feet elevated. I sat beside Camille, trying to remember the last time we'd had a conversation that didn't revolve around Haley's needs or pregnancy symptoms. "So, Mark, how's the consulting business?" Greg asked, making his token attempt at including me. I launched into a story about a client meeting gone hilariously wrong, the kind of thing that used to make Camille laugh until her sides hurt. But the punchline landed flat. Camille sipped her wine. Haley scrolled through her phone, and Patricia worried aloud about whether the chicken was too dry. "The seasoning is way too strong," Haley announced, pushing food around her plate. "It's giving me reflux, kind of like Mark's energy lately." The comment hung in the air like smoke. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but nobody else seemed to notice, or maybe they just didn't care. "Sorry about that," I said quietly. "I can get you something else if—" "I'm fine." Haley waved me off. "So anyway, my doula says the birth playlist is crucial for Maya's first moments earthside. I've been curating it for weeks." And just like that, we were back to Haley's world. The conversation flowed around me. Birth plans, nursery colors, organic baby food brands. I became background noise in my own family dinner. I tried to focus on my food, on the sound of forks against plates, on anything but the growing realization that I'd somehow become invisible. When had that happened? When had I stopped being Mark, Camille's husband, and become just the guy who paid for things? That's when Haley set down her fork and looked directly at me. Her voice was calm, flat, matter of fact. "You're irritating. You nauseate my baby. We want to live without you." The words hit like a physical blow. Silence crashed over the table, forks frozen mid-air, conversation dead. Patricia's eyes went wide. Greg fumbled with his glasses. And Camille? My wife of 3 years, the woman who'd promised to love and honor me. She took a long sip of wine and smirked. Not a word of defense. Not even surprise. Just that small, cold smirk that told me everything I needed to know. In that moment, sitting at a dinner table where I'd been nothing but generous, nothing but present, nothing but useful, I finally understood. I wasn't family. I was a function. I pushed my chair back without a word. Turns out the moment you stop being useful is the moment they remember you exist. I walked down the hallway to the guest room where my gym duffel still sat by the door. 3 years of marriage, and somehow I was still living out of a bag in my own family's space. Behind me, I could hear Patricia's desperate voice calling out, "Wait, there's dessert!" As if apple pie could somehow fix what had just shattered. No one followed me, not even footsteps. Just Haley's voice already complaining about the thermostat being too cold for the baby. The cool desert night hit my face as I stepped outside, keys heavy in my hand. The silence was deafening. But inside my chest, something irreversible had shifted. I unlocked my car, engine growling to life in the driveway, and realized something that cut deeper than Haley's words. Not a single person had come after me. The Desert Crest Motel off Interstate 17 looked exactly like what $49 a night gets you. Flickering neon vacancy sign, cracked asphalt, and the kind of anonymity that felt like mercy. It was 9:42 at night when I pulled into the mostly empty parking lot. The front desk clerk was maybe 22, bored, didn't ask questions, just handed me a key card for room 214 and went back to his phone. The room smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner and old cigarettes, but it was quiet. Blessedly, completely quiet. 2 beds, a desk with a wobbly leg, weak air conditioning that rattled like it had opinions. I sat on the bed closest to the window and stared at the ceiling fan making lazy circles above me. No yelling, no crying, just stillness and the crushing realization that I had absolutely nothing to go back to. The memories started flooding in whether I wanted them or not. 3 years of couples therapy sessions that Camille quit after 2 appointments because the therapist didn't understand our dynamic. The miscarriage 18 months ago that had broken something in both of us, but somehow only I was expected to keep trying to fix it. The way Haley's temporary stay after her breakup had gradually transformed into complete control of our household space, our budget, our entire lives. When had I become the outsider in my own marriage? I pulled out my laptop and logged into our bank account, something I'd been avoiding for weeks. The monthly charges scrolled down the screen like an itemized bill for my own irrelevance. Rent, $1,900. Internet, $130. Groceries, $620. Streaming platforms, $57. Premium baby supply delivery, $84. Haley's car insurance, $190. And then one that made my blood stop. Ronnie's gym membership, $115. Ronnie. Haley's ex-boyfriend, the father of her baby, the guy who'd supposedly disappeared when she got pregnant. The same Ronnie that Camille had sworn was completely out of the picture when I'd asked about him 2 months ago. "Don't be paranoid, babe," she'd said, not even looking up from her phone. "He's long gone." Long gone, but apparently still working out on my dime. I sat back against the scratchy motel headboard and opened my laptop wider. If they wanted to live without me, they could start right now. One by one, I canceled every automatic payment tied to that house. Internet, car insurance, streaming services, the organic grocery subscription, Camille's salon membership that she claimed was essential for work. Click. Cancel. Confirm. Click. Cancel. Confirm. 27 minutes later, I'd just freed up $2,500 a month. Money that had been flowing out of my account like water through a sieve, funding a life where I was barely tolerated. This wasn't revenge. This was self-defense. My phone buzzed with a text, then another. Then it started ringing. Camille's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. By morning, I had 17 missed calls and 23 voicemails. I played the first few just to confirm what I already knew. Not one asked if I was okay. Not one apologized. They were all variations of the same theme. Panic about the consequences of my absence. Not regret about what had caused it. "Hey, where are you? The power's out!" Camille's voice, trying to sound casual. Haley screaming in the background. "The fridge is down! My prenatal meals are spoiling! Maya's health is at stake. This is serious." Now Camille sounded less casual. "Did you cancel everything? Mark, this is crazy. We need to talk." By the fifth voicemail, Haley had taken over completely. "You're harming my baby's development. You're abusive. You're nothing." I deleted them all except the last one. That one I saved. Around noon, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" Haley's voice. Venomous through the speaker. She must have been using someone else's phone. "You're emotionally endangering a pregnant woman. I can take legal action for this." For the first time in months, I actually smiled. "You said I nauseate your baby, Haley. I'm just cleansing your environment." "You're sick. You're twisted. This is abuse." "No," I said calmly. "Abuse is what you've been doing to me for 6 months. This is just me stepping out of the way." I hung up and immediately blocked the number. Then I blocked Camille's number too. The silence that followed was golden. That night, lying alone in a $59 motel bed with sheets that smelled like industrial detergent, I let myself remember what my life used to be like. Before Haley moved in. Before Camille started treating me like a roommate who paid all the bills. Before I became so busy trying to keep everyone else happy that I forgot what my own happiness even looked like. The first year of marriage had been good. Camille used to laugh at my jokes, used to ask about my work, used to curl up next to me on Sunday mornings and plan road trips we never took. The miscarriage had changed her, changed both of us. But grief was supposed to bring couples together, wasn't it? Instead, it had somehow made me responsible for everyone else's healing, while no one seemed particularly concerned about mine. Haley's manipulation had been so gradual, I almost hadn't noticed. It started innocently enough. "I'll cook dinner while you both grieve." Then, "Mark should handle the bills since he's better with money." Then, "Mark doesn't mind picking up my prescriptions while he's out." Each request building on the last until somehow I was running a household for 3 adults and an unborn baby, and the only thanks I got was being told I was nauseating. They hadn't drifted away from me. They'd systematically unloaded me. My phone buzzed again. 17 new missed calls. I turned it face down without looking. Not one of those calls was asking if I was okay. Not one was wondering where I was sleeping or if I was safe. They were all panic about the power bill and the Wi-Fi, and whose responsibility it was now to keep their world running. I'd spent 3 years trying to be the husband Camille needed, the brother-in-law Haley could rely on, the son-in-law Patricia and Greg could be proud of. And in return, I'd been treated like a bank with legs. Well, this bank was officially closed. The first time they call, it's panic. The 5th time, it's desperation. But by the 10th? That's when the manipulation begins. I woke up in the Desert Crest Motel to my phone buzzing like an angry wasp. 17 missed calls overnight, 23 voicemails. The notification screen looked like a digital cry for help, but as I scrolled through the caller log, one thing became crystal clear. Every single call was from Camille's phone, but most of the voices in those voicemails belonged to Haley. I played them while I made instant coffee with the motel's ancient coffee maker. The progression was almost textbook. Panic, then anger, then manipulation, then threats. "The fridge is completely off. All my prenatal meals are spoiling. You're being completely irrational. This isn't how adults handle problems. Do you want your baby niece born under stress? Because that's what you're causing. I'm documenting everything for my lawyer. Abandonment and financial abuse of a pregnant woman. By mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Camille herself. The first direct communication from my wife since I'd walked out. "We need to talk. You're overreacting." Followed 10 minutes later by, "We're still a family. This isn't the way to fix things." I stared at those messages for a long time. Still a family. Right. The kind of family where one person pays for everything and gets told they're nauseating in return. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something I should have done months ago. I started paying attention to where my money had actually been going. The gym membership for Ronnie was just the beginning. I logged into our shared iCloud account, something Camille had forgotten she'd given me access to, and started scrolling through photos and messages. What I found made my stomach turn. Pictures of Ronnie in our guest bathroom, flexing in the mirror. A selfie of him and Haley at some prenatal yoga class. Screenshots of him asking Haley what Mark's schedule was so he could come by when the coast is clear. But the worst part was a group chat I'd been accidentally left on. Camille, Haley, and 2 of their friends. The messages went back weeks. "Ronnie's been staying over when Mark's on his business trips," Haley had written. "It's so much more peaceful." Camille's response, "Mark's too busy crunching numbers to notice anything anyway, lol." Another message from Haley, "Honestly, Mark's like a bank with legs. Ronnie's fun. Mark's useful." And Camille had responded with 3 laughing emojis. I sat in that motel room staring at my phone, watching 3 years of marriage crumble into a punchline. They hadn't just been taking my money. They'd been laughing about how oblivious I was while they did it. The calls kept coming. By evening, Camille had left 6 more voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. But still, not one of them asked how I was doing. Not one apologized for the dinner. Not one acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, telling someone they're nauseating might hurt their feelings. Then Haley called from yet another number. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice dripping with fake authority. "You're going to come home and turn the utilities back on, or I'm calling the police for domestic abuse." Domestic abuse? I almost laughed. "Haley, I'm not even married to you. You abandoned a pregnant woman. You cut off power to a house with a baby on the way. That's abuse." "No," I said, feeling calmer than I had in months. "That's called not paying for people who treat me like garbage." "You'll be responsible for any developmental issues my baby has, any complications from stress. Your stress isn't my responsibility, Haley. Your baby isn't my baby. And frankly, after what you said at dinner, I'd say the baby's better off without my nauseating presence." She started screaming something about lawyers and rights, and how I was a sociopath, but I hung up. For the first time in our entire relationship, I hung up on Haley Moore. It felt incredible. That evening, Camille tried a different approach. She sent me a selfie, her sitting in our old apartment, looking sad and vulnerable, with the caption, "Is this really how you want us to end?" I stared at that photo for a long time. She was sitting on the couch I'd bought in the apartment I'd been paying for, looking heartbroken about a situation she'd helped create. The manipulation was so calculated, it was almost impressive. I turned off my phone. Sitting in the growing darkness of that motel room, I finally let myself feel something other than anger or hurt. I felt free. For the first time in months, nobody was asking me to fix something, pay for something, or solve someone else's problem. Nobody was rolling their eyes at my jokes or treating my presence like an inconvenience they had to tolerate. The silence wasn't empty. It was clean. I remembered how it started with Haley. After Camille's miscarriage, when we were both raw and grieving, Haley had shown up with casseroles and tissues and offers to help around the house. She seemed like an angel at first. Cooking, cleaning, giving Camille someone to talk to while I threw myself into work, trying to outrun my own grief. But then the changes began, subtle at first. She rearranged our living room furniture to create better energy flow. She took over the grocery shopping because she knew about nutrition. She started controlling the thermostat, the Wi-Fi password, the TV remote. And somehow Camille started deferring to her sister's opinions over mine. About everything. What we ate, what we watched, how we spent our weekends, how we spent our money. I'd been so busy trying to be supportive during our grief that I'd handed over control of my own life without even realizing it. The next morning, I walked to a diner down the street from the motel. It was the first meal I'd eaten alone in over 6 months. And when the waitress called me "sir" and asked how I wanted my eggs, something inside me almost broke. Such a simple courtesy, being treated like my preferences mattered. "Over easy, please," I said, and she smiled and wrote it down like it was the most natural thing in the world. When was the last time someone had asked me how I wanted something? When was the last time my opinion had been the deciding factor in anything that affected my own life? I ate my eggs and bacon and toast, read the newspaper, and felt like a human being again instead of a credit card with a pulse. When I got back to the motel, my phone showed 31 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic texts. But there was one message that made my blood run cold. "I know you're at Desert Crest. We're coming." I looked out the window at the parking lot, heart pounding. A black sedan was pulling in, and even from the second floor, I could see Camille's silhouette in the passenger seat. There's something deeply healing about being fed by people who don't want your credit card first. I grabbed my duffel bag and slipped out the back exit of the motel before Camille and whoever was with her could make it upstairs. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my old college roommate's driveway in Glendale, wondering if I was about to impose on people who'd barely heard from me in 2 years. Damon Lewis answered the door in a paint-splattered t-shirt, took one look at me and said, "Jesus, Mark, you look like hell." For some reason, that made me laugh, the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. "Can I crash here for a few days?" I asked. "I'll pay rent, buy groceries, whatever you need." "Shut up about money and get inside," his wife Selena called from the kitchen. "I'm making pancakes." Their townhouse was everything mine wasn't. Warm, lived in, filled with actual sunlight, plants on the windowsills, books scattered around, the kind of comfortable mess that happens when people actually enjoy being in their space. Selena appeared with a plate of pancakes and bacon without asking what brand I preferred or whether it fit into anyone's meal plan. "So," Damon said, settling into the chair across from me, "what really happened?" I told them everything. The dinner, Haley's words, Camille's silence, the financial discovery, the voicemails, the photos of Ronnie in my bathroom, the group chat messages calling me a bank with legs. When I finished, Damon was staring at me like I'd told him I'd been living with aliens. "They used you like a utility company," he said finally. Selena was less diplomatic. "They used you like a sucker." She pulled out a notepad. "Okay, let's see the damage. What exactly were you paying for?" We went through it line by line. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, subscriptions, gym memberships for people who weren't me, prenatal yoga streaming services, organic everything. When we added it up, Selena whistled low. $2,700 a month. Jesus, Mark, you were funding your own abuse. "So what are you going to do now?" Damon asked. For the first time since walking out of that dinner, I felt like I had options instead of just problems. "I'm going to remember what it feels like to live for myself," I said. Over the next few days, I started doing exactly that. Damon and Selena's guest room became my temporary sanctuary. I moved the furniture around to face the window instead of the wall. I bought a small journal and started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. I took long walks in the morning without checking my phone every 5 minutes. Most importantly, I started working again. Really working. Without the constant interruptions of Haley's crises and Camille's emotional demands, I found my focus returning. I landed 2 new consulting contracts in 3 days, both paying better than anything I'd taken on in the past year. "You know what's funny?" Selena said one evening as we sat on their back patio. "You seem more like yourself in 3 days than you probably did in 3 months at home." She was right. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have opinions that mattered, to make decisions without committee approval, to exist as Mark instead of as Camille's husband or Haley's ATM. Then, on day 4, the doorbell rang. Selena answered it, and I heard a familiar voice from the living room. "Hi, I'm Camille, Mark's wife. Is he here?" I looked out the window and saw her standing on the porch. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing one of my old sweatshirts. She looked smaller somehow, defeated. "We'll talk," I told Selena, "but out here, not inside." I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. Camille's eyes were red-rimmed, but I couldn't tell if it was from crying or from not sleeping. "You look good," she said quietly. "I feel good. Mark, I didn't think it would go that far. Haley was just emotional. Pregnancy hormones, you know? I didn't mean for any of this to hurt you." I studied her face, looking for something genuine beneath the rehearsed apology. "You didn't mean to hurt me, Camille?" You smirked. When your sister told me I was nauseating, you smirked and sipped your wine. I was uncomfortable. I didn't know how to react. You knew exactly how to react. You chose not to. Her composure started cracking. "We're stressed, okay? The bills, the baby coming, Ronnie being unreliable again, it wasn't about you." "It's never about me, is it?" I said. "Until the power gets cut off. Then suddenly it's all about me." That's when she broke. The tears started, and with them, the truth. Haley's she's been manipulating me too. I see that now. And Ronnie, he's been living there for weeks, in our guest room. I should have told you, but I knew you'd be upset. And things were already so tense. So you let me pay his gym membership instead. "The rent is overdue," she continued, the words tumbling out. "The utilities are cut off. Haley's having panic attacks about giving birth without air conditioning. Ronnie keeps disappearing when things get hard. Everything's falling apart." I watched my wife of 3 years fall apart on the porch of my friend's house, and I felt nothing. No urge to fix it. No impulse to rescue her. No familiar guilt about being the strong one. "Just come home," she pleaded. "Fix this. We can start over. I'll make Haley apologize. I'll set boundaries. Things will be different." "You want a husband, Camille? Act like you have one. Otherwise, you'll need to find a new bank." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Mark, please, I'm begging you. You're not begging me to come back because you love me. You're begging me to come back because the lights don't work without me." Her face twisted with something ugly. The first honest emotion I'd seen from her in months. "You'll regret this. You'll be alone, and we'll be fine without you." "I hope you are fine without me," I said. "I really do." She stormed off, yelling something about how I'd changed my mind when I realized what I was giving up. But as I watched her drive away in the car I'd been making payments on, all I felt was relief. That night, Damon helped me apartment hunt online. We found a 1-bedroom place in Scottsdale, clean, quiet, $950 a month. Less than half what I'd been paying to live as a stranger in my own home. I applied the next morning and got approved that afternoon. For the first time in years, I was going to live somewhere because I wanted to, not because someone else needed me to. 3 days after Camille's visit, Selena showed me something on her phone that made me laugh out loud. "Moving sale this Saturday," the Facebook post read. "Furniture, electronics, household goods, downsizing to a smaller place, life transitions, time to let go and grow." The photos showed our couch, our coffee table, even the espresso machine I'd bought Camille for our 2nd anniversary. Everything I'd worked for, bought, and maintained was being sold off like garage sale leftovers. But you know what? Let them sell it all. I was about to buy my own furniture, stuff I actually liked, in a place where I actually wanted to be, with money I no longer had to share with people who treated my generosity like an obligation. The revenge wasn't the silence, or the canceled bills, or even walking away. The revenge was becoming the man they no longer had access to. When you stop feeding the leeches, they either learn to hunt, or they die trying. The Facebook post that Selena showed me was just the beginning. Over the next few days, as I settled into my new apartment in Scottsdale, I watched their world unravel from a comfortable distance. My one-bedroom place was everything their house wasn't: quiet, clean, and completely mine. $950 a month, which felt like pocket change after years of hemorrhaging, $2,700. I bought a simple couch, a coffee table that didn't require committee approval, and set up my laptop by the window where I could watch the desert sunrise while I worked. But the real entertainment was watching the digital breadcrumbs of their collapse. Selena had become my unofficial intelligence officer, keeping tabs on the social media fallout. The Facebook post had generated a lot of confused comments from mutual friends. "What happened to Mark?" one person asked. "Where are you moving?" asked another. Camille's responses were masterpieces of manipulation. "Just evolving, focusing on what matters. We've outgrown old patterns." "Old patterns," I muttered, scrolling through the comments. "Like having someone pay the bills." Damon looked over my shoulder and snorted. "She should list the house under sponsored by Mark Ellison, LLC. But Selena's real estate connections provided the juiciest details. Camille and Haley had signed a lease for a 2-bedroom apartment in Buckeye, $1,200 a month, about half what they'd been living in before. Move-in date was immediate. And the kicker? Ronnie Carter was listed as an official occupant. So now that the bills are his problem, suddenly he's ready to play house, I said. It was almost poetic. When I was footing the bill, Ronnie was a ghost who couldn't commit to anything except my gym membership. Now that he was financially responsible, he was posting Instagram stories of himself painting the baby's nursery and talking about stepping up as a father. The irony wasn't lost on me. The moment I stopped being useful, he became indispensable. Through our mutual acquaintances, I learned that Haley had suddenly discovered she could work after all. Customer service for some skincare company, $19 an hour, completely remote. The same job she'd sworn she couldn't do while pregnant because it would be too stressful for the baby. Funny how unstressful it became when the alternative was homelessness. Meanwhile, my email inbox became a daily source of dark comedy. Camille had launched a campaign that would have impressed a political strategist. "We made mistakes," read the first email. No specifics about what those mistakes were, of course. "You weren't perfect either," came the second one. Classic deflection. Make it about my failures instead of her betrayal. Let's not throw away 5 years over one bad night. 5 years reduced to one bad night, as if the months of manipulation and financial abuse had never happened. But my favorite was, "I know you're hurt, but this silence is childish. We're adults. We can work through this." Adults. Right. Adults don't let their pregnant sister tell their husband he's nauseating and then smirk about it. I deleted every email without responding. Silence, I was learning, was the most powerful response I could give. My new routine was becoming something I actually looked forward to. Morning jogs through the desert trails near my apartment, coffee on my small balcony, watching the sunrise paint the mountains orange and pink. Client calls where I could focus completely because no one was screaming about the thermostat or demanding rides to prenatal appointments. I'd started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Watercolors of the Arizona landscape, abstract pieces that captured the freedom I was feeling. No one critiqued my color choices or asked if I couldn't do something more useful with my time. For the first time in years, I felt like Mark again instead of just Camille's husband or Haley's ATM. Then came the voicemail that almost made me laugh out loud. It was from an unknown number, but I recognized Haley's voice immediately. She'd clearly coached herself on sounding reasonable. "Mark, hi, it's Haley. I just wanted to say, maybe I was wrong about some things. I was stressed, and pregnancy hormones, you know? Maya was born last week and she's beautiful. She deserves a family, even if that family includes someone who overreacts sometimes. If you want to meet her, we could talk. Maybe work something out." The manipulation was so transparent I had to admire the effort. She'd gone from telling me I nauseated her baby to suggesting I was an overreacting family member who might want to meet said baby. The emotional whiplash was impressive. I deleted the message without a second thought. That evening, Damon and Selena invited me over for dinner. Real dinner. Not a performance where someone counted the cost of every ingredient. Selena had made enchiladas, and I brought a bottle of wine that I'd chosen because I liked it, not because it paired with someone else's dietary restrictions. "You know what's weird," Selena said as we sat around their kitchen table. "You look 10 years younger than you did 2 weeks ago." She was right. The constant stress lines around my eyes had faded. My shoulders didn't ache from carrying everyone else's problems. I was sleeping through the night for the first time in months. "I gave them everything," I said, cutting into my enchilada, "and they wanted more. I gave myself nothing, and I nearly disappeared." "But you didn't," Damon said. "You got yourself back." The next morning brought one final surprise. I woke up to find a thick envelope that had been slipped under my apartment door sometime during the night. Expensive paper, familiar handwriting in blue ink. Camille's final play. I made coffee before opening it, taking my time. Whatever was inside, I knew it would be carefully crafted, emotionally manipulative, and ultimately meaningless. But I was curious to see how she'd try to rewrite history one last time. 3 pages of her neat handwriting, filled with the kind of emotional language that used to work on me. How we were both hurt. How Haley was sorry too. How Maya had been born and was beautiful. How they wanted to rebuild. And I was still the only one she'd ever truly trusted. There was even a photo of the baby. Tiny, wrinkled, innocent of all the manipulation that had brought her into the world. The closing line was perfect in its calculated vulnerability. "If you're willing to come home, we'll be waiting." I read it twice, then set it aside and went back to my painting. A desert landscape at dawn, all orange and gold and infinite possibility. They could wait all they wanted. I was finally home. Sometimes the most brutal form of revenge is peace. I set Camille's letter on my coffee table and went back to my easel. 3 pages of carefully crafted emotional manipulation, complete with a photo of baby Maya and promises of change that rang as hollow as campaign pledges. The closing line, "If you're willing to come home, we'll be waiting," assumed I still considered that place home. I didn't. Home was this quiet 1-bedroom apartment where no one demanded I justify my breakfast choices or criticized my work schedule. Home was the place where my art supplies lived on the windowsill without someone asking if I couldn't do something more productive. Home was wherever I could exist as Mark instead of as someone's financial solution. I mixed orange and gold on my palette, adding touches of pink to capture the way the desert sunrise painted the mountains. The painting was almost finished, my first complete work in over 3 years. I'd forgotten how satisfying it was to create something just because I wanted to, not because it served someone else's agenda. By afternoon, I'd made my decision about how to respond to Camille's letter. She'd put effort into those 3 pages, so she deserved a response. But it would be my response on my terms, with my truth. I found a sheet of good paper and wrote by hand. "Camille, thank you for the letter. I can see you put a lot of thought into it, and I appreciate that you shared the photo of Maya. She's beautiful, and I genuinely hope she grows up healthy and loved. You wrote that we were both hurt, and you're right. But here's what I learned while you were waiting for me to come back. Being hurt doesn't excuse hurting others. Being stressed doesn't justify treating someone like they're disposable. I spent 3 years trying to be the husband you needed, the provider your family required, the man who could solve every problem and absorb every crisis. I lost myself completely in that role. The night at your parents' house, when Haley said I nauseated your baby and you just smirked, that wasn't the beginning of our end. That was just the moment I finally saw what I'd become to you both. You've learned to live independently. I've learned that I was never truly seen. This isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about peace. I hope Maya grows up in a home filled with genuine love rather than financial convenience. I hope Ronnie steps up the way he never did when I was paying his bills. I hope you find happiness that doesn't require someone else to fund it. But I won't be coming back. For the first time in years, I've come home to myself. I wish you all the best. Mark Ellison. I read it twice, then sealed it in an envelope and walked to the mailbox personally. Dropping that letter felt like closing a book I'd been trying to finish for years. The desert sky was shifting from blue to orange as I walked back to my apartment, and for the first time since this all began, I felt completely at peace. No phone buzzing with crises. No guilt about not solving someone else's problems. Just the quiet satisfaction of a man who'd reclaimed his own life. That evening, I drove to Damon and Selena's for dinner. Real dinner, with people who enjoyed my company rather than just my bank account. Selena had made her famous lasagna, and the conversation flowed easily between work stories, travel plans, and the kind of comfortable nonsense that happens between actual friends. "You know what I realized today?" I said as we sat around their kitchen table. "I haven't had a genuine conversation about my own interests in over 2 years. Everything was always about pregnancy symptoms or bills or Haley's latest crisis." "That's not a marriage," Selena said bluntly. "That's a hostage situation with shared finances." After dinner, Damon helped me move a storage unit I'd been avoiding. Inside were boxes of memories I'd packed away when Haley moved in and took over our living space. Photo albums from college, books I'd loved, art supplies that had been deemed too messy for the household. We found our wedding album buried under some old tax documents. I flipped through it slowly, looking at pictures of 2 people who seemed like strangers now. Camille in her white dress, radiant and happy. Me in my tuxedo, believing I was starting the greatest adventure of my life. "Want to keep it?" Damon asked. I considered it for a moment, then tossed it in the donation pile. Someone else can use the photo album. But there was one box that made me pause. Letters and cards from my family. My sister Brianna in Colorado. My parents before they passed. Friends from college. Messages that had nothing to do with Camille or Haley. Reminders of who I'd been before I became someone's ATM. The next morning brought a text that almost made me cry with relief. "Mark, it's Brianna. I heard through the grapevine what happened. I'm proud of you for putting yourself first. You deserve so much better than what you've been accepting. Come visit us in Denver. We miss you. The kids ask about Uncle Mark all the time." My sister. When was the last time I'd even talked to her? Haley's constant drama had consumed so much energy that I'd let my real relationships wither. I texted back immediately. "I'd love to visit. How's next month?" Her response came within minutes. "Perfect. I'll make your favorite chocolate chip cookies." That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went furniture shopping for pure enjoyment. Not because someone needed something, not because the old furniture was wrong for the energy flow, but because I wanted a new reading chair for my living room. I found a perfect leather recliner, deep brown with good back support. The salesman didn't pressure me, didn't ask who else needed to approve the purchase. I bought it because I liked it, paid for it with money I'd earned, and arranged delivery to my apartment where it would sit exactly where I wanted it. Simple adult freedom. It felt revolutionary. That evening, settled in my new chair with a book I'd been meaning to read for months, my phone buzzed with one final message from an unknown number. "This is Patricia. I wanted you to know that Greg and I always liked you. What happened at dinner was wrong, and I'm sorry we didn't speak up. You were always good to our family, even when our family wasn't good to you. I hope you find happiness." I stared at that message for a long time. Of all the apologies I might have expected, Patricia's hadn't been on the list. But it meant something. Validation that I hadn't imagined the disrespect, that at least one person had seen what was happening and recognized it was wrong. I texted back, "Thank you, Patricia. That means more than you know." 3 weeks later, I was on a plane to Denver, watching Arizona shrink away below me. My sister met me at the airport with a hug that lasted about 30 seconds longer than necessary. "You look different," she said, studying my face as we walked to her car. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you've been carrying something heavy and finally put it down." She was right. For 3 years I'd been carrying the weight of everyone else's problems, everyone else's needs, everyone else's emotional stability. I'd nearly disappeared under that weight. but I'd found my way back. That night, sitting around Brianna's kitchen table with her family, playing board games and eating homemade cookies, I realized something profound. This was what family was supposed to feel like. People who enjoyed your company, who asked about your life because they cared about the answer, who didn't see you as a solution to their problems. "Uncle Mark," my 8-year-old nephew asked, "are you going to stay in Arizona?" "For now," I said. "I like the desert. It's peaceful. Will you paint me a picture of it?" "Absolutely." As I tucked him into bed later, he asked one more question. "Are you happy now, Uncle Mark?" I thought about it for a moment. Really thought about it. Was I happy? The apartment that was completely mine. The work that challenged me without draining me. The silence that felt like freedom instead of punishment. The art supplies by the window, the morning jogs, the conversations that weren't about bills or crises. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "I really am." Flying back to Phoenix a week later, I looked out at the desert landscape I'd chosen to call home and smiled. Somewhere down there, Camille and Haley and Ronnie were figuring out how to be a family without my financial support. I hoped they were happy. I genuinely did. But whether they were or not, it was no longer my responsibility to fix. The revenge wasn't the silence, or the canceled bills, or walking away when they needed me most. The revenge was becoming the man they no longer had access to, and discovering he was pretty great company.